it seems to me that we really shouldn't follow history books. We really shouldn't follow things like the Bible as a means of determining our beliefs. We should kind of look at the broader picture and see that there are all sorts of religions that are all kind of pointing towards the same meanings. And why don't we just absorb them all as a good thing, as opposed to just blindly following something like the Bible, in which the eyewitness accounts go against each other. Only, I think the virgin birth is only mentioned in one of the Gospels, which is kind of a weird thing for the rest of the disciples to leave out of their descriptions of Jesus. It's a pretty big deal. So obviously these eyewitness accounts aren't very reliable in the first place.
Let me make sure I heard you right. Did you just say an eyewitness account is not accepted in a court of law?
They're very unreliable. People who see someone murder someone that they love, or see something like that, are very likely to say that they think this is the right person, they think this is the person that did it, just because they want it to be solved.
Sir, you could be put to death based on eyewitness testimony.
But
So please don't tell me that eyewitness testimony is unacceptable in the court of law.
Psychologists have proven that that's a very unreliable way of doing things.
Well, fine. But in reality, sir, you could lose your life next year due to eyewitness testimony.
But that doesn't...
If people stand up and say, I saw you murder that guy, you could be put to death.
That doesn't change the fact that it's an extremely unreliable way of doing it.
Really? Well, then why on earth, pray tell, does University of Connecticut do something so cruel to you as to charge you money to take a history course? If history is such a bunch of bunk, why would the University of Connecticut have the audacity to charge you your good hard-earned money to study history?
You gotta do it.
Huh. I'll tell you why, sir, because University of Connecticut is not a bunch of neophytes. They're a bunch of people who understand that historical knowledge is a legitimate form of knowledge. The difficulty is to put together tests that you use to determine what is accurate history and what is inaccurate history. And if anybody wants to tell you that the Holocaust never took place, that it's simply a Jewish plot to garner Gentile sympathy, they're blowing smoke, sir, in your face. The historical evidence is the Holocaust did take place. And guess what? If anybody wants to tell you that slavery never took place in the United States, they're blowing smoke, sir. Because the overwhelming eyewitness testimony is slavery did take place in the United States.
Nobody's ever tried to tell me that, though.
Good. Because the historical evidence is the Holocaust and slavery did take place.
I think it's a little different to compare the Holocaust, in which like hundreds of thousands of people were murdered, to a situation like Jesus, where it's one person.
Really? You think Napoleon fought the Battle of Waterloo?
Excuse me?
You think Napoleon fought the Battle of Waterloo?
I don't see what you're getting at.
Sir, you made a basic statement. Of course we believe the Holocaust took place, because thousands of people died. Well, sir, history is not just about thousands of people. History is about individuals as well, like Napoleon, like the Duke of Wellington, who duked it out at the Battle of Waterloo. And that's a legitimate historical fact. Why? Because eyewitnesses saw it.
These are all real things that occurred. They're not people saying they saw miracles occur. The Battle of Waterloo wasn't a miracle that someone saw happen. And said they saw happen.
So now we're getting down to your real issue, which is miracles, right?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Like Jesus could have happened, he could have died, he could have been resurrected, but where do you make the leap of faith to say that this was a miracle and not just something scientific? People are put into the grave nowadays being determined medically that they're completely dead, 100% dead, and they still come out of the grave 3 days later. So are all these people just Jesus coming back to see us?
All right.
What I can assume?
You have a presupposition, and your presupposition is naturalism. And your naturalism tells you it is impossible for a dead person to come back to life. But that's only if there is no supernatural God. If there is a supernatural God, it's very reasonable that a dead person could come back to life.
So you have to make that assumption before you can believe anything.
That's exactly right. You have to allow for the possibility of a supernatural God. Now, why would a thinking person believe there's a supernatural God? Because the evidence is the order and the design of this world demands an intelligent mind, a designer. Because the DNA of a single cell is so much densely packed information, it demands an intelligent mind. Because the innate human drive for meaning in life points us to the fact that we have been made for a purpose. The innate human drive to understand what is the meaning of this. My life, this action, demands a creator. It's because of evidence like that that it's clear that a supernatural being exists. Yes, sir.
I was just gonna say that I feel like, I mean, for me at least, I don't care what he believes in. I don't care what you believe in. I don't care what she believes in. I feel like everyone gets caught up so much in their religion or whatever that they forget about being human and worshiping each other. I feel like religion causes so many problems in the world. If you look around, you go to other places, you see all these wars happening mostly because of religion, who he believes in. Well, oh no, this guy's the prophet. Oh no, this is the way to live life. Why don't we just stop thinking about all these things that we don't even know about completely and just worship ourselves and be human and just enjoy life?
Good question. The reason that self-worship is so dangerous is
I'm saying it's not self-worship. I'm talking about worshiping each other, worshiping life in itself, not worshiping these things that we don't even know about.
the reason that me worshiping you is so dangerous.
I'm not saying that. I'm saying worshiping life.
Okay, what does that mean to worship life?
Everything. Just worship everything around us. Not worship the...
I think he means it in more in a sense like appreciate rather than like the traditional religious worship.
Yeah.
Okay, but when you look at nature, if you think about it, it demands a creator. Why? For two reasons. First of all, there's so much design in nature, there's got to be a designer.
But how do you know it's a God? How do you know? It might be an alien for all we know.
All right,
You never
be
know.
alien, be it God, but there at least is someone.
But why should we worry about that? Why can't we just worry about ourselves and where we are right now as a planet?
I actually have something
Because
to add.
narcissism is very, very dangerous.
I have something to add on to him about the creationism argument. Well, not creationism, intelligent design type argument. Is that if you look at books like Richard Dawkins' The Blind Watchmaker, they show that evolution is a process that doesn't work through design. It comes about over time through not even really trial and error, just through the processes that survive stay and the ones that don't. So I think to say that nature, I mean, whether or not you believe in Christ, that's your personal decision. But to say that the world necessarily needs a designer, wouldn't you say it's a bit of a false statement, considering we can show how it didn't? And we can show how, even like if you say the perfect conditions of life, because of where the sun is, where the water, how this all works, you can say, well, yes, with the billions of years that have passed and the even more billions of galaxies that have come up and down, and even more solar systems, eventually just through the probability, a planet like this, and there's probably countless others, had to have some sort of life and had to be at those conditions, just through probability.
Through probability. So because there are millions of universes and billions of years, this happened by probability.
Eventually it would have to occur mathematically, correct?
Eventually it would have to happen mathematically. Fine. Then let's you and I play poker.
Okay.
And I'll deal.
I'm not very good, but all right.
Neither am I. But when I deal, I'm going to deal myself 4 straight hands, all aces.
It could happen eventually.
And as the guys around the table are reaching for their 6-shooters to blow me away for ripping them off, I'm going to say, guys, you got to understand. There are an infinite number of universes with an infinite number of time. And in light of the infinite number of universes and the infinite amount of time, there is a universe where I can deal myself 4 hands, all aces. So you just got to realize that's the universe we happen to live in. Sir, go ahead and believe that if you want to. I can't have that much blind faith.
But how is
That is too much blind faith. I can't do that. And if you want to tell me that you can deal yourself 4 straight hands of just aces, and then I'm going to say, wait a second, bud, you must be cheating. And if you say to me, oh no, man, we just happen to live in this universe where the one freak accident occurred where I could deal myself 4 hands, all aces. I'm sorry, sir. The evidence is you're a cheater. The evidence is not this happened by chance. And to try and make an argument that the incredibly complex design of the human eye is just a chance occurrence, give me a break. I just can't, I can't take that. Rationally, it just makes no sense. There's a major breakdown rationally.
So, would you say God is perfect?
No. It all depends how you define perfect. Define perfect for me.
Having all desirable traits.
Having all desirable traits. You got to define that more clearly. Because if what you mean by God is perfect is, the perfect God is like the perfect computer who spews out perfect computer printouts. No. God is not a machine. God is a personal being who chooses to partially limit his power by creating you with a free will, which means you're not a pure perfect computer printout. You can choose to do that which is good, or you can choose to do that which is evil, and God makes you do neither.
Okay. Well, I just have a question. Like, why is God a jealous God? Like, why does he mind that you worship other religions as long as you follow what are like almost the same like teachings of Christ? Like, if you're respectful to other people, if you're a nice person, if you help the people who need help, why won't he accept you in heaven?
God is a jealous God for the same reason that if you come home and find your wife in the arms of another man, hopefully you will experience jealousy. That is not a selfish jealousy. That is an understanding that my wife has broken faith with me, she has broken our trust relationship, and she is choosing a very sad alternative. Hopefully, if you have children, when you see your children dealing with a drug dealer, you will experience jealousy and say, no, I don't want my children to be hoodwinked by a drug dealer. When you love someone, you are jealous for them, which means not selfishly jealous. It means you want the best for them, and if they choose to turn away from the best, you'll experience a holy jealousy.
Yes, but that jealousy is warranted with a connection that was already there. Like, your wife has loved you because of marriage, and
Yes.
she was supposed to love you and only you.
Yeah.
How about people who are born in, let's say, like countries where they never experienced Christianity, like in the Amazon jungle?
No problem. They still have more than enough evidence that God exists, and if they thank God for the gift of life he's given them, that's beautiful.
So why does that same concept apply to people who know Christianity exists but do not fully believe in it, or do not or are just too justified in their own faith?
Because Jesus claimed to be God in human form who really loves you, and by his Holy Spirit he's reaching out and drawing you to himself, and if you reject him, you're rejecting God. The same way if the people in the Amazon hear about Christ and reject Christ, they're rejecting God. I mean, who is God? I can make God in my own image. I can worship a 6'1" white Anglo-Saxon, but that's a false God. That's a God I've created in my own image. I can create God wrapped in an American flag, but that's a God created according to my own cultural biases. The question is, who is the true living God? Jesus Christ made this audacious claim, I am. Now, the evidence of his life, teachings, death, and resurrection from the dead point to him not being a candidate for a mental hospital. Instead, they point to him being a candidate for your worship. I mean, if you're not going to trust Christ, who's more reliable than Christ, and why?
Well, I don't know. I mean, I have read part of the Bible, and I have also read part of the Quran, and I also read the Bhagavad Gita, which is the Hinduism.
Great.
And I really, they all sound fairly convincing to me. Like, I don't know what to believe.
Okay. Well, first of all, I want to thank you, because you've been out here several days, and your attitude and the way you've talked with me is been off the charts fantastic, so I want to thank you for that, okay? Now, what I would plead with you, sir, because of your genuineness, is I respect you for reading the Bhagavad Gita, for reading the Quran, for reading the New Testament. You're right. You're a searcher after truth. You're not just going to blindly believe. Good. Please stay that way. But now, secondly, now you got to start asking yourself the hard question. What does the evidence point to? That's objectively. But then subjectively, cry out, God, if you're there, I want to know you. And sir, if you'll genuinely do that, Christ insists that God loves you so much, he's not going to play hide and seek with you. You'll find him, don't worry. But if you play games, watch out. Keep going, man. You're on the right track.
I'm a little confused by your statement. So
What's confusing?
I should just cry out to God and ask him to show himself to me.
Yeah.
Like how? Like, do I just wait around, or?
Yeah. I don't know how he's going to do it. That's between you and God. I mean, if he really is God, sir, if he really created the universe, he's more than capable of connecting with you, but I don't know how he's going to do it. So it would be a little presumptuous for me to tell you how he's going to do it. He knocked Saul of Tarsus off his horse. All right? He didn't do that to me. So I don't know how he's going to do it with you. But you're on the right track. Read the Gospels, examine Christ, read the Quran, read the Bhagavad Gita. You're searching for truth, right? Bravo, well done. Now ask yourself, does the evidence point to the avatars being reliable? Does the evidence point to Muhammad being reliable? Or does the evidence point to Christ being reliable?
Well, the most reliable text I read was actually David Hume. David Hume who is a materialist.
The most reliable books you read are by David Hume? Oh, come on.
Well, that's the one I believe in the most. That makes the most
Okay,
sense.
fine. Why do you believe David Hume?
Because, well, it just makes the most sense about cause and effect. Well,
What?
he doesn't deny that God exists. He just says that, like, you don't know.
So you think that's the most reasonable conclusion? You just don't know?
Well, like, I'm gonna keep looking, but I imagine right now, I don't know.
Yeah, but sir, you got to live your life. And the way you live your life tells what you believe, that you believe either God does exist or he doesn't exist. It's impossible to be an agnostic. Because you have to make ethical decisions every day. Are you going to cheat? You're going to tell the truth. You're going to date rape? You're going to respect her. You're going to be racist? You're going to respect all people. And you see, those ethical decisions that you and I make every day tell us what we believe about reality. Is this guy valuable enough for me to tell him the truth, even when it would be more expedient for me to lie to him?
It's for you to decide.
Yeah, but the decision that I make tells you my worldview. Is it more important for me to win the day in a business deal, or is it more important for me to respect him and tell him the truth? And the decision that I make shows I can't be agnostic.
I've heard you make a good case for theism, for morality, there being an objective moral code. But what leads you to take the next step into Christianity in particular instead of any of the other major or even minor world religions?
Great question. Thanks for raising it. I hit a brick wall when I get to theism. You're right. I've tried to explain to you all the evidence that points to some type of God existing, or gods. But there is no way that I can reason my way to know God. I can't figure God out. Why? Because I've never heard God's voice audibly. I've never shaken God's hand. I've never seen God face to face. Now, the reason that that should not frustrate me is the following. Hi, my name's Cliff. What's your name?
John.
Philip.
John.
Henry?
John.
Theodore. Okay, not only am I being rude to you, but I'm being incredibly arrogant. I think that I know your name better than you do. What a joke. What an absolute farce. There's only one way I'm going to have the honor of getting to know John. And that is if I have the humility to allow John to reveal to me who John is. Well, if that's true between John and Cliff, how much more true that is between God and Cliff. I had better have the humility to allow God to reveal whoever God is. Now, sir, that is where Muhammad, the avatars of Hinduism, Jesus Christ, the great Jewish prophets, Shirley MacLaine, David Koresh, enter the picture. They all claim to be revealing God accurately. They contradict each other. So either they're all wrong, or one of them's right. Now, why would I trust Jesus Christ? Because the historical evidence of the way he lived his life, in my best moments, I've tried to live that way, and I have miserably failed, but I've tried. Secondly, the content of Christ's ethical teaching, like the Sermon on the Mount, where Jesus says, if someone strikes you on the right cheek, turn to them the other also. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Those ethical teachings make sense. Third point, as I watch him nailed to a wooden crossbeam, instead of cursing his enemies the way I would have, he prays, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. But fourthly, and most importantly, 3 days after he dies, he physically, bodily rises from the dead, and over a period of 40 days, he appears to over 500 people who see him risen from the dead. These people are willing to die, not for their beliefs, not for their feelings. They're willing to die for what they claim to have seen, the dead Christ risen from the dead. It's a no-brainer, guys. The grave of Muhammad is full. I respect Muhammad, but his grave is full. The grave of Siddhartha Gautama Buddha is full. I have a great deal of respect for the thinking of Siddhartha Gautama Buddha. The grave of Jesus Christ is empty. It's his historical resurrection that sets Christ apart as unique, as trustworthy. That's why I think it's wise to trust Jesus to reveal God accurately.
What does Christianity say about reincarnation?
You bet. Good question. What does Jesus in the Bible say about reincarnation? Reincarnation and resurrection, karma and grace contradict each other. Karma is the idea that you pile up either good or bad during your life, and then your karma works itself out in the next reincarnation. Grace says there is no way that you can get to heaven by your works, by piling up brownie points with God. Instead, heaven is a gift that God gives us out of his generosity because he loves us. So karma and grace contradict each other. And then reincarnation, the idea that you have many opportunities to try to live life better, is contradicted by resurrection, which teaches it is appointed unto man once to die, Hebrews 9:27 writes, and after that, the judgment. So I don't have many opportunities to relive my life. I've got one time to live my life, and then I will be judged by God according to Christ.
Yeah. But you see, in the Bible, it talks about the prodigal son.
Yes.
About how this person screws up his son and comes back.
Yes.
Now, that's how you're supposed to live up to and aspire to, is to give people many chances and forgiveness and whatnot.
Yes.
Wouldn't that make more sense to say, hey, I screwed up royally on earth, let's go back?
Okay.
That's more of a torture than I could say hell would be, because, man, you have to live that crap again, but you'll also learn.
Interesting point. You're absolutely right. The prodigal son messed up royally. His father has his arms wide open, and the prodigal comes home, and the father doesn't say, get out in the field and earn your way back. He says instead to the servants, quick, kill the fatted calf, we're going to feast and celebrate. This son of mine was lost, and he's found. He was dead, and he's alive again. That's grace. But you're right. Jesus insists, the Bible insists, that this life, one life, is the time that God has given you and me to decide where we want to spend eternity, either together with God or separate from God. There is an incredible finality to death, according to the Bible and Jesus.
And then what exactly is separation from God?
Jesus defined separation from God as being hell. He did not give us a photograph. Obviously, people have tried to paint a picture of hell.
So then, theoretically, if you are separate from God, you go somewhere else, correct?
You're either annihilated or you experience life separated from God. But you're not going to be with God.
If you're separate from this God, could you be sent to another one?
Well, according to Christ, there only is one God. There are not many gods.
But then Christ only had one point of view,
Just the same way you and I only have one point of view.
and that was from one culture. And it's...
Remember, everybody has one point of view. The person who says, all roads lead to heaven, has one point of view. All roads lead to heaven. The person who says, some roads lead to heaven, has one point of view. Some roads lead to heaven. The person who says, one way leads to heaven, has a point of view. One way leads to heaven.
So based on all the evidence I see before me, how would you convince me to switch this religion if indeed Christianity is very evangelical in nature?
All you have to do is ask yourself, who or what am I living for? And secondly, what is the evidence that what I'm living for is true? Then you need to look at Jesus Christ by reading the Gospels of Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, and ask yourself, is there not more evidence of his life, teachings, death, and resurrection that point to Christ being credible and reliable than there is evidence that the object that I've put my faith in, whatever that object is, and obviously I don't know for you, you have to answer that for yourself, is there not more evidence that Jesus Christ is reliable as opposed to the object I've chosen to put my faith in? Let me give you one quick example. And I don't know that this is true of you, obviously, because I don't know you. But many people say to me, Cliff, unless you can scientifically prove it, it's not true.
Not necessarily.
Okay, but do you realize what a philosophy that is? That is a faith. Because all you've got to ask that person is, would you please scientifically prove to me that unless you can scientifically prove something, it's not true? You see, science is a wonderful branch of knowledge. But there are so many philosophical questions in life, it's incredible. And yet there are many Americans who are making this incredible mistake of saying, well, my faith ultimately is in science. That is so embarrassing. It's scary. How do you go on a scientific date? How do you run a family on science? How do you have a friendship scientifically? How do you scientifically show me that George Washington was the first president of the United States? Science is a wonderful branch of knowledge, but it's a very, very narrow branch of knowledge. And yet some people blindly say, well, yeah, my faith is ultimately in science. Holy smokes.
There's, 4 different accountings of Jesus' life, and only in one of them does he say, forgive them for they know not what they're doing. In another accounting of the Bible, he asks, God, our Father, why have you forsaken me?
Right.
So how do you explain this contradiction here?
Well, sir, there's absolutely no contradiction. What is a history? Every history is a selective account of what really happened.
But I mean, those are two radically different ideas. If you're trying to express the mindset of Christ, one of them he understands what he's doing. He realized he's died in sins, and the other one he has no idea what's going on. He doesn't understand why he's been offered up as a sacrifice by God. So which is correct?
You bet. What Jesus insisted is that when he was dying on the cross, God the Father put the sins of the world on his Son Christ. In other words, Christ became sin. And when he became sin, he was separated from his Father, whom he had spent eternity with, and he experienced a cosmic alienation from the Father. And understandably, he cries out, my God, why have you forsaken me? In 2 Corinthians 5:21, Paul writes, God made him, Jesus, who had no sin, to be sin for us. So God the Father poured out his wrath on my sin on his Son Christ. Christ paid the penalty that I deserve. That's why he can offer me forgiveness. God is just. The penalty for my sin is death and hell. But God is also forgiving. And the justice and the forgiveness of God come together at the cross of Christ, where he absorbs, as a substitute for you and for me, the penalty we deserve for our wrongdoing, thereby offering us forgiveness.
Well, okay, so you say God is just, so he puts all these sins on his Son, but, I mean, isn't it unjust to set a standard that humanity can't possibly live up to?
Good question. Adam and Eve did not have to sin, and in a very real sense, I don't have to sin, neither do you.
Well, you just said in your own life you've tried to live a sinless life like Jesus, and you have failed.
I sure have.
And so I would say that it is, while it's a great aspiration to have, no one can actually live like that. It's not. There are the levels in your life that are just it is inhuman to be able to resolve. So isn't that unjust to expect more of his creations than we are capable of?
Okay, good question. You're right. I was not born with a perfectly clean slate. I was born with what Dallas Willard, the philosophy professor at USC, calls a readiness to sin factor. And so are my 3 kids. And if you work with children, you see that readiness to sin factor in little children. All right, so you're right. We're born scarred. Absolutely correct. We're born scarred. So now the question is there a solution? And that's what Jesus Christ offers. Now, even though we're born scarred, don't you and I respect the Mother Teresas, the Gandhis, the Dr. Martin Luther Kings of this world?
Yeah.
The Harriet Tubmans? When we see people who live exemplary lives, we sit back and say, wow, that is really good. I respect that.
But even those people don't live up to the standard. I mean,
Exactly.
My Mother Teresa, we find in her diaries that she was, in great doubt of God until the day she died.
Yes. And I find that kind of honesty refreshing, don't you?
Oh yeah, no.
I love it. I can promise you,
But still,
anybody who doesn't doubt is probably on their way to being brain dead. So nothing wrong with doubt. The question is, what do you do with your doubts? Do you allow your doubts to harden into unbelief? Or do you allow your doubts to motivate you to investigate further? One quick point. Every human being has faith. What does that mean? Every human being has a worldview. What does that mean? Every human being has to answer the questions. Where do I come from? Why am I here? How do I live my life? And what happens after death? None of us can prove that our answers to those questions are right. But hopefully we have evidence that the way we answer those questions is right. See, so the question is not, why do you believe nothing? Nobody believes nothing, because life forces us to put together a worldview. And it was fascinating. Yesterday and last week, a UConn student just couldn't grasp what I was saying. This UConn student was insisting, I'm agnostic, I do not know anything about these questions. I said, really? You're lying to yourself and to me. Look at you, you're well dressed. Look at you, you're a talented student here at UConn. You didn't arrive here by accident. You have priorities, you have motives, you have a worldview. So get in touch with your worldview. Get in touch with what motivates you, what you're living for. Because you wouldn't be here by accident, that's for sure.
But sorry, you still haven't really answered my question. Why would God set a standard we can't live up to if we are His creations?
Well, Adam and Eve were more than able of living up to that standard. Now, that standard doesn't change, because you see, the standard that God sets is His character, which is eternal.
Okay.
That standard is justice, compassion, goodness.
So you're saying that our problem is original sin?
That's part of it. But I can't blame my grandparents, because to be honest with you, sir, I have done that which I knew was wrong.
Okay.
And I can't, I've been proud, I have lusted, I've been greedy, I've had sexist attitudes, I've had racist attitudes, and my African American brothers and sisters and my fellow human beings who happen to be women have had to help me work through some of those attitudes and help correct me. So I am responsible for what I choose to do. Now, yes, I have this readiness to sin factor. The Bible calls it a sinful nature, for sure. But I still am responsible for what I do.
Okay. So again, we're back to the point that you have the you have this inclination, and it is almost inhuman to try to live up to the standard of that God sets out. So how can you be a just God if he wants too much of us?
It's human. It's what it means to be human, to live up to that standard. It is degrading of me and degrading of Him for me to curse Him, for me to dump on Him, for me to be sarcastic with Him and rip Him to shreds. That's inhuman. To be human means, as God created us to be human, to respect Him, to love Him, to think about His needs, to seek to meet His needs. Now, I don't do it perfectly, that's for sure. But as I aim at that standard, I'm becoming more human, as God created me to be human.
Okay, I guess my question is then, why is the penalty death and hell for doing something that, for a standard that almost no one can live up to? Yeah.
All right, you bet, great question. Because in reality, this man is of inestimable value. So when I dump on him, that is really evil. And when I basically say, hey God, when you made him, lousy job. Not only am I attacking him, but I'm also attacking the God in whose image he's created. I'm basically saying, God, I got a better way to live life. Instead of respecting this gentleman, I'm going to be disrespectful. And God says, guess what, Cliff? You could not be more wrong. And if you separate yourself from me in that way, by dumping on him instead of respecting him, there are consequences.
The universe is
I wouldn't say infinitely large, but it's so large to a point where the chance of all of this happening is infinitesimally small. But when you have such a large pool of these accidents, you're bound to get one that succeeds in creating intelligent life.
Okay. So what I hear you saying is you believe life comes from non-life. I'm sorry. I've never seen anything to back that up. What you're telling me is the personal comes from the impersonal. I'm sorry, I've never seen anything to back that up. You're telling me that order and design come out of chaos by chance. I'm sorry, I've never seen anything to back that up. You're telling me that the rational, a thinking mind, comes from the non-thinking, the irrational. I'm sorry, I've never seen anything to back that up. Sir, you have so many miracles you believe in, but the problem is you don't have a miracle maker. That's why I feel you're an intellectual hypocrite, because you're not willing to face the fact that if I believe we're all accidents, life is meaningless, morality is relative, and death is obviously the end. And you got to read Friedrich Nietzsche. He pours scorn on you guys.
By saying that, though, you're saying that all these things that we can't understand, all these things, all these accidents, all the creation of life from non-life, all these things that we can't understand that science has not yet to explain, the only way we could possibly witness something like this happen is because there must be a God.
Sir, it is impossible for science to explain the meaning of life.
The meaning of life is something, it's like beauty is in the eye of the beholder.
No, sir.
The meaning of
it is a
life can be a lot
philosophical
different.
issue. Therefore, science has nothing ever to say about meaning of life, because it's not a scientific question. It's a philosophical question. Science has nothing to say about right and wrong, because it's not a scientific question. It's a philosophical, theological question.
So what is the meaning of life?
Well, obviously, if there is no God, there is no meaning to life. We just happen. But if there is a God who creates us for a purpose,
what's that purpose?
To love God with your heart, soul, mind, and strength, and to love your neighbor as yourself. That's why God made us. To love God and to love each other.
It sounds like a selfish God.
Yeah, that's what it does. It sounds like God's conceited if He created us to love Him.
Good. Very good. Who benefits most from me loving God? I do. Who benefits most from me loving other people? I do. The reason that God created me to love Him and to love people is not because God desperately needs my love. It's not that He's insecure and needs me to massage His ego. Rather, it's because He's a loving being who created me to interact with Him, not to be dominated by Him, and to interact with other people. That's why He created us. That's exciting. And guess what? If you'll examine your life, you'll have to admit, yeah, that is the bottom line for me in life, isn't it? My relationships. That's what brings my life joy, meaning. My relationships.
I can believe that without believing God created me.
I know that.
I can associate like the universe as our creators.
You can believe anything you want to believe.
All your accidents.
But the question is, why do you believe what you believe? And if you tell me there is no God, and then you talk about love as being more than a chemical reaction, you're an intellectual hypocrite. Because if you're a naturalist, if you're an atheist, you have reduced reality to matter and energy, which means love is simply a chemical reaction. So tell your girlfriend, I don't really love you in any theoretical sense, but I have chemical reactions that you excite.
Hi, I'm Nick, and I attend Grace Community Church. And one of the things I love about Grace Community Church is when I walked in the first Sunday, everyone came up to me, greeted me, shook my hand, took my number, and right off the bat, we had great relationships throughout the church. So I think as a newcomer, anyone that hasn't been should come join us. It's at 9:30 on Sunday at Sachs Middle School in New Canaan. You should be there.
Why can't you be spiritual without believing in God?
What does it mean to be spiritual?
Believing in something other than just matter and energy, but you don't have to believe that there is a supreme being. You can still believe in love. You can still get meaning from your life by loving other people, but not loving God.
How on earth do you get a real, intangible value of love if there's no creator? How does that happen? It's impossible, man. Because if there is no God, reality is matter and energy. There's no spirit. You see, when you say there is no God, you're limiting reality. And you're saying, you want to know what real is, Cliff? Real is matter and energy. And I'm saying, guess what? You know better than that. Because although you experience matter and energy, you also experience this innate drive for meaning. Now, that doesn't have meaning. And neither does electricity. No meaning there. It takes a conscious mind to understand meaning. And if there's no conscious mind prior to the human mind, then obviously it's the human mind that creates meaning. And if my meaning in life is to date rape, I'm not wrong, I'm not right. It just is. And for you to tell me that there's some absolute meaning in life, it's totally false. You can create your own meaning, and I can create my own meaning, but we better realize it's a fantasy. It's a prejudice.
So what about religions that believe in many gods and don't believe in one God like you? They get meaning out of life.
And they are consistent. And they are intellectually consistent. But the atheist who says there is no God or gods, but there is meaning in life, is being an intellectual hypocrite. But if you're a theist, be a pantheist, be you a polytheist or a monotheist, it doesn't matter. But if you acknowledge that there is some type of God, then you're right. You can have real ultimate meaning in life.
So if I don't believe in God, but I live a good life, I'm kind, I'm generous, I'm very moral, but I don't believe in God, am I going to hell?
If you're an atheist, why are you concerned about hell?
Well, I'm just wondering from the perspective of someone who does believe in God. If there are people who don't believe in God, but they're good people, do they go to hell?
If you are truly good all the time, 100% of the time, you'll go to heaven. You're a morally perfect person. But if you're like me, someone who tries to do good but too frequently does evil, if you're like me, someone who's chosen to rebel against God, then you wouldn't want to go to heaven, because heaven you have to live together with God. So hell would be better, because in hell, you're separated from God. And if you want to be separated from God, He'll grant your request. I'm kneeling here praying that you're going to put your faith in Christ and go to heaven. Yes, ma'am.
Do you think it's impossible for atheists to have morality or just absolute morality?
Thank you.
From a materialistic perspective,
Right.
I think absolute morality, if you're an atheist, you cannot have absolute morality. You can't say, well, there is an absolute code. However, you can have a matter of practical morality, which says, I agree with other people, we're going to call this thing wrong, and we're all going to act as if we're not supposed to do this thing, say murder other people. And generally, it's beneficial for me, because if I follow this, then my neighbors will follow it. Would you consider that to be intellectually consistent? Because from an evolutionary and social perspective, that to me makes sense.
Absolutely.
And I can call things, I can say it's really good for you to give money, and say, and say, you know, I can say that's really good, and I don't mean that in an absolute sense, but I mean that in a, that's how it makes me feel, and from a practical sense, by evolutionary and social matters,
Exactly.
it's good.
Exactly. But if I come to you as a Nazi saying, my society has agreed that Jews are inferior, need to be gassed. You're not right. I'm not wrong. I'm not right. You're not wrong.
And there is no
It's
way.
all relative.
Yeah, and there is no way I can prove that, as from an atheistic perspective, there isn't. I can say, I think, you know, for empathetic reasons or for how I feel it's wrong, but no, I don't think you can find any atheist who will actually argue that absolutely by some intangible standard it's wrong.
Good. But here's why it's impossible to live that out. if he steals something from me, like my bike or my backpack, when I look him in the face and say, you should not have stolen my bike, you ought not to have stolen my backpack, all of a sudden I'm appealing to this intangible standard outside of him and me. I'm appealing to his conscience and saying, come on, buddy, wake up and smell the coffee.
Are you appealing to an intangible absolute moral, or are you appealing to his empathy, his feelings, and the social standard that's been set up?
I'm appealing to his conscience, which hopefully ties him into moral absolute that stealing is wrong.
I guess.
When I'm married
No, go ahead.
to a person, I think if you ever marry a person, at times you're going to look that spouse in the face and say, you should not have treated me that way. And whenever you use that word should, you're appealing to an outside standard and saying, I hope that you use your mind and your conscience to inform you that that behavior is wrong. See, that's not coming from atheism. That's coming from a theistic worldview that it says, indeed, there is a standard, and you broke the standard when you treated me that way.
In nature, species who survive are not necessarily the strongest, not necessarily the fastest, not necessarily the smartest, but those most adaptable, sudden, and dramatic change. And if you highly specify, you lose that ability. And it's because we have such a diverse gene pool that random mutation can happen, even in handicapped people, mentally handicapped, physically handicapped, which is why these people are important to the gene pool. I mean, from an entire species standpoint, everyone is very important to the survival of the species.
Great, that's your view. But obviously, the Nazis insisted the Aryan race is a superior breed to other races. That's why we have to wipe them out and get everyone to follow the Aryan way.
And which is why their argument was incorrect, because they were looking so very short-sighted. That as well.
Switching the topic, I'm only wearing black until they make something darker.
Yes.
What does that mean?
It means it's hilarious and I like to wear it.
Very good. What do you think of Jesus Christ?
Well, I think he was a man, and I think that even by secular definition, he was a saint. I mean, he was probably a fantastic person. If I went back in time and met him, I would say, you're an incredible person. I believe your next question would be, do I believe in God? I wouldn't say that I do. I wouldn't say that I'm an atheist, however. I do think that there's more to the superstructure of the universe than we even think is there. I think that maybe the idea of what I believe in is something that other people could call God, but that's not the way I like to look at it.
Okay, now this Jesus who you respect so highly, obviously he claimed to be God.
Okay.
How do you handle that?
I believe that the idea of God, if you want to define it as God, I like to think of it as a more abstract idea and say that yes, this sort of idea is there. And I think it's a part of all of us. And someone so saintly as Jesus could rightly say that he is God. And, you know, I mean, it's sort of like the proof is in the pudding sort of thing, that he was such a good person. And, you know, I mean, because he just wanted to teach people to be good to other people and to teach them how to live a meaningful life and things like this. That, you know, it's there in all of us, and it's just a matter of bringing it to the surface.
Okay, but the problem is that he repeated the Shema of Israel. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God is one. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. Love your neighbor as yourself. So he was a strict monotheist, one God. And then he goes ahead and claims uniquely to be God in human form. I mean, isn't he a candidate for a mental hospital at that point?
In today's society, most people would likely look at him that way, yes, but I don't think that, I mean, he wasn't hurting people. He wasn't, you know, he wasn't advocating slaughter of millions.
That's for sure.
he was just going around. He was living with the impoverished. He was living with, you know, prostitutes, and you know, he was with them, and he was showing them there's something better for you.
Good. Exactly. But my problem with what he says then is, he says, if you believe in me, you're going to heaven. If you reject me, you're going to hell. I mean, if you have a professor here at UConn who teaches good teachings all semester long, then, lacking the persuasive skill to motivate you to study for his exam, he threatens you with expulsion from UConn if you get below a 90. I would not call the dude a good teacher. I would call him a crass manipulator who, lacking the power to, or the persuasive skill to motivate you to study for his exam, he threatens you. I mean, would you call that good?
Probably not.
I'm with you.
Well, because what he was starting with was the basis of Judaism, which, I mean, of course, didn't have hell, but they did have the idea of God and the idea that, you know,
judgment.
And these
the prophets, right? The prophets talk about judgment.
But, and I'm venturing a little out of my territory here. I'm not that well versed.
No, you're doing well, sir. You're doing very well.
But, so there's his basis, and I think also you have to look at. I mean, let's see,
Let me take another tack. Okay. He claimed that he loves you so much that he went through the hell of the cross so that you would not go to hell, you'd go to heaven. Now, in light of the fact that he claimed to love you, the individual, that much, what would be the most appropriate way to respond to his love?
To accept it.
Good. So do you think that might be a wise decision, to accept his love and to put your faith in him?
You could definitely argue that. I don't think that necessarily you strictly have to follow him, though, because you can look at his stuff and you can say this guy was a smart guy. You know, I mean, he was a good guy. You know, and he taught people a very good way to live. But I don't think you necessarily have to say I'm all for everything that he is and everything that he was and everything that he did.
Okay. But when you read the Gospels, what you'll notice is they have a perverse fascination with his death on a cross. The Gospels are obviously not biographies. And when you read what Jesus taught, he kept on calling people to himself, to put their faith in him. Not to put their faith in his teachings or his doctrines, but he kept on calling people, come to me, believe in me, trust in me. And he said the reason that that was so important was twofold. First of all, because of his identity, he really is God, and he's saying, come to me, the personal God. Live in a spiritual relationship with me. And then secondly, he's saying, I bled and died on a cross to break the barrier that exists between you and God, because God is absolute good, and you are not absolute good, and you can't coexist. I bled and died on a cross to forgive you, to reconcile you, to restore you into a right relationship with God. You see how he calls us not so much to a philosophy, he calls us to himself, to trust in him personally, not just some ideas or a philosophy.